What is your name?
My name is Bernard Malcolm Nass, Jr.
Okay. And all right. When were you born? What year?
I
What
was
was
born
your
in
birthday?
1930,
What was your birthday?
October the 18th,
And where were you born?
Decatur, Georgia, DeKalb Avenue.
And where did you grow up?
Uh, it was split between Atlanta, Georgia, and Denver, Colorado.
And so, did you guys move around a lot?
No, I moved twice before moving to Denver, and I didn't move around a lot until I got married.
Who were your parents?
Bernard Malcolm Nass, Sr., and my mother was Glennie Melissa Johnson.
Very nice. Okay. And what were they like as parents?
They were perfect parents. What I would call perfect parents. We were well taken care of. We had everything we needed, even though they struggled and struggled at times to provide for us. They did provide for us. They got the job done.
Would you have considered yourself poor?
Yes. At one point, we were poor in just after the Depression.
Did you feel like you were poor as a kid?
No, I didn't.
What's your earliest favorite memory?
I would say my earliest favorite memory by far then would be when Grethel said she agreed to have our first date. Grethel is my wife, my beautiful wife.
Right. How would you describe yourself as a child?
Obedient to my parents because they were strict, and I was the oldest male, and my father was a real disciplinarian.
Were you good at sports?
Yes, I would say I was a little above average at sports.
While growing up, did you have a nickname?
Junior,
And how did that come about?
because I was named for my father.
Do you have any favorite stories from your childhood? Something you remember doing? I know you've shared some with me in the past, but
Yes, one was, I think one of the main ones, I was picked on in junior high school, in elementary school, I'm sorry. I was picked on because of the school that I went to. It was just following the Depression. I went to a rather poor school, and most of the students that came down from the North Georgia mountains, their parents had, looking for employment. They were poor and even uneducated for the low grades that they were in. I mean, they were ruffians. And my favorite memory was that the question?
Yeah, your favorite story from
My
childhood.
favorite story, okay. I had been picked on to where the kids would take my lunch and so forth, take my lunch money and push me around until one day in the 5th grade, I kind of lost it. And I was alone in the classroom except for the biggest bully in school, a kid named Royce Kirby. And I think at that point I kind of lost my mind. I was staring at Royce, and I just suddenly said, "Royce, come here for a moment." And when he walked up within range, I put a haymaker on him, my fist into his jaw. He screamed and he ran from the room. He ran to the principal's office, and she came back in with him, and he said, "He hit me, he hit me." And I said, "He hit me first," which was a lie. The principal knew what a ruffian, pick-on bully he was.
A bully, yeah.
And so she took him out of the office by the ear and said, "Junior is right." And from that moment on, I was never picked on again. And as a matter of fact, when we left the school that day, I saw his girlfriend standing on the corner waiting to cross the street with a group of other children. I came up behind him and I was carrying my geography book. Her name was Jacqueline Fowler. I hit her in the back of the head with the geography book and said, "Now go tell Royce who did this to you." That's one of my favorite memories because I lived in hell for a while.
Did you enjoy school?
No, I didn't.
Really did not, huh? What kind of a student were you?
Average, probably a C average. I did what I had to do to get by.
If I were to be able to talk to your classmates that time and during school, how would they remember you? How do you think if they would remember you?
To be totally honest with you, in the early years, I don't think they would remember me at all. High school, they would remember me probably for getting into some pretty severe trouble at one point.
Are you still friends, or did you remain friends with anyone from that time in your life?
Yes, I did with four four guys, Dean and Dell twins.
What was their last name?
Tillman. And let me see, who was our main leader? It was Don Davis. The other guy can't have been much of a friend. I don't recall his name.
And then, didn't you remain friends too from a friend early in childhood in Atlanta?
Yes, I did with Gerald Spencer. We were neighbors from I'm going to say, roughly from the late 30s until 1945. At that time, we moved to Denver, Colorado. But Gerald and I remained friends throughout the years up until his death a few years ago, and we would correspond via phone and U.S. mail.
What would, if you've got one, if you don't, that's fine. What would your worst memory be of school while you were in school, whether elementary, junior high, high school, whatever? Just your worst memory, if you have one.
Yeah, I do have a worst memory. It's when I got in trouble at North High School. I was sitting next to a young female student, and she got into an argument with me and gave me a four-letter word. I gave it right back to her. She began to cry and went up to the professor and told him what I had said to her, but not what she had said to me. I was ordered to leave the room, and so I turned over the table that we were sitting at, a big library table with 4 or 5 students into there. I just flipped the table over on its top, and I went to the principal's office, and I was kicked out of school for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow, I never knew that one. All right, now you are married.
Oh yes,
obviously. And what is your wife's name?
Grethel Louise.
And when and where did you meet?
We met at an Inglewood bowling alley.
What year would you think that would have been?
I think that would have been probably 1957.
And how did you meet? What were the circumstances of your meeting?
When I arrived at the bowling alley to visit some friends there and watch them bowl, they had brought along this really cute babysitter. That happened to be Grethel, and she was watching their 2 girls. Grethel was a standout. She was beautiful. And so, to impress her, I began to show her what a bowler I was. And so I would even throw the ball into the lane next to me after I'd had a few beers. I made a complete fool of myself. I assumed after following that Grethel would never have anything to do with me again. And so I wrote her a note, put it in her mailbox, telling her that she had not met the real me, that to give me another chance, to let me show her what a gentleman I can be, and she agreed. We went to a place called Collins Coffee Shop on Welton Street across from the Orpheum Theater. We sat there for about an hour, and she told me about her life, her childhood, and I told her about mine. And from that point on, we began to date steady.
And how many years have you two been married now?
We have been married 60 years.
Oh, wow. What do you love the most about your wife?
It's hard to name a one thing really, because I love almost everything about her. I love her personality, her mannerisms, the way she handles being a wife, the way she handled being such a wonderful mother. It's hard to pinpoint one single thing. She's just A1 in my life.
Is there anything you might want to brag about her, if you want to? Brag on her a little bit, if there's anything that, if you want to.
I think I said it all just about before. She's just to me, the perfect wife and mother.
Very good. This is just general questions. What is your passion? If you have a passion, what is it?
It'd probably be for art, for painting.
All right. What is your favorite food? If you have think of a favorite food.
Let's see. My favorite food.
I know you're not a food favorite person the way most people
No,
are. I know
I'm
that.
not, really not. I'll tell you. It would probably be my favorite food. I think if I had to pick one thing I could eat daily, it would be grits and eggs and bacon.
About actor, you have an actor you really like, growing up or now. If they're in something, you want to see it because they're in it.
Who played from here? Who is the actor from?
Burt Lancaster.
Burt Lancaster. How did you know that?
From Here to Eternity, when you said that. So. And your favorite movie?
From Here to Eternity.
There you go. Your first car. What was the first car?
1947 Dodge.
1947 Dodge. What color was that?
It was brown. I paid $35 for it.
Well, 1947. If you could go back and live in another time, what year would it be, and why would you choose that time?
I would be living in America pre-discovery of America.
All right. So, in the 1300s?
Probably the 1300s.
In your life, if you have one thing, what are you most proud of?
My wife and my sons.
If you could hold on to one memory from your life forever, if you were going to have to lose all your memories, but there was one that you could keep, you could choose the one you could always have, what would that be?
I think it would be when I was sitting in the car with Grethel. We were dating, and I had been offered a job with the Utah Mining and Construction Company to go to sea, guard their cargo. And I think it's when Grethel said, yes, I will go with you.
And where were you going to go?
Lima, Peru. I was going to ride the cargo ships for Utah Mining and Construction from San Francisco to Lima, Peru. Wages at that time top wages were about $30,000 a year. I was going to be paid $75,000 to $80,000 a year. I was going to have free housing in Lima, Peru. And the main thing is, when I mentioned that to Grethel, she said she would go with me. I'll always remember that, because that meant she would marry me.
What were the negatives for her going with you out there?
I found out they were having a lot of problems in Lima. There were riots in the street. They were having government problems and so forth. And I talked to a guy that had spent some time there, and he told me the worst thing I could do would be to put Grethel there and leave her alone while I was at sea for 2 months. So I turned the job down.
All right. How has your life been different than what you imagined when you were a kid? Looking, anything? Did your life end up going a way that you didn't really see that coming, or?
From childhood?
Yeah, when you were a little kid thinking
Okay,
about.
from childhood, I thought I was going to be a wonderful aviator.
Oh, okay.
And so it's 180 out from that.
Very good. How would you like to be remembered?
As a good husband and father.
Good husband and father. And for your great 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 grandchildren that will listen to this years from now, is there any wisdom you'd want to pass on to them? What would you want them to know from you?
They're probably living in a very high technical world, but I'd want them to all know that beyond all the technology, all of the latest marvelous things, they've got to fall back on the Bible.
Yeah, that's something interesting. What are your religious beliefs? Do you consider yourself a Christian?
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell me about your relationship there with God.
I talk to God every day. I understand that I can do that. I read the Bible every day now. I didn't for years, but I do now. I went to St. Luke's Church as a child. I still remember portions of sermons. I remember reading the Bible at that time. And I was given a Bible for going in consecutive Sundays as a child. I have a better awareness now of the Word of God. When I read it, it has more meaning now than it did when I was a younger person. I never liked that term "born again." I just consider myself a Christian.
And so you don't.
Because I was a Christian when I was in elementary school, as far back as I can remember, and going to church. I enlisted in 1950, about August or September. I went down to enlist, and I would sit on a bench outside waiting for him to call my name. 4 or 5 hours would go by. They would never call my name. They'd call everybody up to me, and then I would have to go home, come back the next day. I did this repeatedly, 3 or 4 days, and they never got to me. This began to irritate my dad, and so he sent the recruiting office what he called a night letter, and told them that he keeps seeing commercials on the air, enlist in the Navy needs you, blah, blah, blah. And my son goes down every day and attempts to enlist, and he has for over a week. Why can't he enlist in the Navy? Well, apparently one of the officers got hold of the letter, came down to the chief in charge, and read him the letter. And so he came out of the recruiting office where they swore the guys in and so forth, and where we were lined up on a bench, and he said, "I'm looking for someone named Nays." And well, it wasn't me, I'm Ness. And he shouted, "Nays, Nays," over and over again. Finally I said, "Are you trying to say Nass?" And he said, "That's it, that's you, come in here." And he said, "I understand you want to join the Navy awfully bad, so you're going to be in the Navy in 5 minutes." And they swore me in. I got ready to leave. I said, "I'll leave now." I said, "What should I do?" He said, "We'll be leaving tomorrow for San Diego on the California Zephyr." I said, "Okay, what time?" He said, 8 a.m. I said, "Okay, fine, I'll see you at 8 a.m. He said, "No, you're going to see me the rest of the afternoon. You're in the Navy now. And you're going to sit out there and work or sit on the bench until I find something for you to do. So I went out and I sat down. He came out a little later and he said, everybody's going home now. You can swab this hall. You're in the Navy. He apparently hated me because he got chewed out by his commanding officer.
Exactly.
So that's the way it started. The way the situation was back then, Harry Truman was president, the Cold War was going on, and he had made a statement that if any communist nation invades a non-com nation, he will have to reinstitute the draft because they're going to build a gigantic military and we're going to fight them. Well, that particular evening, before I enlisted, I was with a group of 3 or 4 friends. We were lifting weights in a garage. We were listening to music. They interrupted the program. It said North Korea has just invaded South Korea. And they went on talking about it, and they mentioned the draft would be reinstituted. We knew we were done. We were perfect age, perfect condition. So we quit lifting weights and we went to a place called the Hilltop Drive-In, 4 of us, and sat there and had a beer and all decided tomorrow we will enlist in the Navy. Well, 3 of us did. 1 joined the Naval Reserve, and the rest, and I had to have a minor operation before I could go. And so my 2 buddies, Dale and Dean Tillman, they left the next day.
Wow.
After they enlisted, and they were sent to the Great Lakes. When I was transferred out, I took the California Zephyr to California. I went to San Diego Naval Training Station, and I did 9 weeks of boot camp, of regular boot camp, and then I did 2 weeks with the they would be the Navy SEALs. At that time they were UDT, underwater demolition. And I took a 2-week course in simply how to kill a man with my bare hands. I had seen so many movies throughout World War II, and I didn't miss a one. I just about knew what it was going to be like, and it was almost exact. Basic training was very, very tough. It was more like being in the Army because all you did was drill, march left, right for literally 4 or 5 hours a day. And then you'd have on some days you'd have obstacle courses, other days you would have swimming, but most of the time it was simply close order drill with the rifle. Yeah, the funniest moment in boot camp was when we had to go swim. We had to climb up a 30-foot ladder and walk out on the diving board. They told us to cross our legs, hold our nose, jump straight down, go to the bottom, totally nude.
That's what I thought.
Go down to the bottom, kick off, drift as far as you can. When your drift stops, begin to swim. So I did this and swam on to the end, got out and climbed up and stood and watched the other guys do it. And some were so pitiful, they were non-swimmers. And when they jumped into the water, the Navy had guys lined the side of the pool with long bamboo poles to pull them out. And they would pull them out, pull them over near the edge, then another sailor would beat their hands off the pole and make them sink. And they did this repeatedly until they almost drowned, and they would pull them out of the water. It was really comical. I served in primarily in North Korea. I knew where I was going. After boot camp, I got a 2-week leave. But prior to leaving, I checked to see where I was going to be sent. And it said, it mentioned USS Karmic, destroyer minesweeper. And then I looked up its location, and its location was Yangdo Island, North Korea. Not South Korea, but North Korea. And that threw me a curve. I didn't know how anyone could be surviving in North Korea. Oh, I remember my first time aboard ship. I remember looking for my ship. I was make a long story short, to get to Korea, they put me on a gigantic troop ship called the Thomas Jefferson, APA Thomas Jefferson. And they sent me to the place called Amchitka in the Aleutian Islands on that ship to drop off a bunch of other military men and primarily Seabees. And then we went from the Aleutians to Tokyo. When I got to Tokyo, I checked into Shore Patrol headquarters and asked them, how do I get to Sasebo, Japan? That's where my ship was, supposedly. And they gave me directions on how to take the train and so forth to get to Sasebo. And I took a train. It took me through either Hiroshima or Nagasaki. I remember it was level from the atomic bomb, but I don't remember which city I went through.
Right.
When I got to Sasebo, I didn't know what to do. So I went to Shore Patrol headquarters again and said, how can I find the USS Karmic? They told me simply go out in the street, flag down a rickshaw, tell him USS Karmic, no more than $1. So I did. And I picked up a guy, a rickshaw operator. He would hold 2 sticks and run pulling the cart.
Right.
And he took me to a long pier, a big golden arch over it, and I walked through that, and there were beautiful ships lined up in there. I kept looking for mine. I didn't see it, and when I got to the end of the pier, there was a dry dock there. A dry dock is a big empty crater cut out to hold the sea back so that they can repair ships.
Mm-hmm.
My ship was down in that hole, and the whole side of the ship was gone. And there were Japanese welders, everybody was working, there were sailors with no shirts on, everybody was brown, tan, seemed to be having a good time, all laughing and hollering. And I was disappointed when I saw it. It looked like a scrap heap. And when I checked in, I told them, Bernard Nash reporting aboard for duty, handed them my orders or my papers, and they told a messenger to show me to my bunk where I'd be sleeping. A messenger led me down the deck toward the aft part of the ship, and there was a ladder going down to below decks where we'd be sleeping, but above deck there was a bloody fist fight going on between Tex and Frank Eustis, 2 beautifully built bronze sunburned guys, very strong big boys, and they're both a bloody mess, really swinging at each other. We walked around that crowd, and I went down below decks. I went down below, and the young man that took me down, seaman apprentice, he said, I'm leaving you now, you'll sleep down here. Boom, he was gone. I looked around for a bunk. I saw a bunk, but the mattress folded back, threw my sea bag on it, and a voice from another bunk said, new men, seaman apprentice, don't get top bunks. So I took a bottom bunk, pulled it down, and that's where I started. Confidence. I had more confidence than I would have dreamed I could ever have gained over a 4-year period.
How did you feel coming out of that, coming home? Were you elated? What'd you think? How was
I
that?
was at odds with myself. I didn't know whether to come home or not. I looked forward to the day that I would get out, but when I finally got out, I felt so lost.
Okay.
I didn't know whether it would be better to become a civilian or stay in the Navy.
While you were in the Navy, was there anything that you especially missed about civilian life?
Oh yeah, I miss a lot. I miss the freedom you have on your job. I miss the guarantees in life of 3 square meals a day, not having to look for a job, always having the best medical care.
So in this case,
no, only because the Navy was so new to me. Everything was a new experience. I really had little time to think about the past. Okay, that would be Les Mellicar. He was my best friend aboard the Karmic. I remember a lot of things about him fondly. We were protectors of each other. He was just a great friend and shipmate. We went to the Hollywood studios. Les thought he could become an actor. He was a handsome guy, about 6'4", 230, beautiful build. And we knew each other very well. I knew where he came from. He came from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He lived on L Street. I've forgotten the number. And he knew where I lived. And a funny thing, Les pulled on me. When we were in San Diego, at the end of the workday, when we were off and we were going on liberty, we would always go to a bar called Bradley's 5 and 10 and have one beer. And from there, we'd go wherever we wanted to go, whatever adventure we were looking for. But one particular day, I hadn't seen Les for about 24 hours, and I wondered where he was. Thought, well, maybe he's ashore, maybe he got special liberty or something. Not thinking more about it. Well, at the end of the workday, I went ashore. I went to Bradley's 5 and 10 the way Les and I always did. Ordered a beer, and I was sitting there, and I got a phone call. Is there a Bernard Nass in this bar? And I thought, who on earth could possibly know that? In a strange town, my name.
Yeah.
And I got up, I said, it's me. And I took the call, and it was Les Millicar, my shipmate buddy. He was calling from my home in Edgewater, Colorado, telling me that he was helping my mother cook and that he was taking my sister to the movies after dinner. And I could only surmise Les knew where I would be because he and I always went there, and he caught me there.
I love it. That's a classic. So, did you guys ever pull pranks on each other?
I pulled him on poor Les all the time. He pulled a few on me. He was very naive, and he didn't know how to get even. I would do things like take his hat off the bunk and put it on my head and go up and look over the side of the railing with him and take his hat off his head and throw it in the water. And then I'd hold my hand on my hat real lightly so he could get it, and he'd throw mine in the water.
So he ended up throwing both
and then I
his
could
hats.
Tell him, Les, they're both yours.
Oh my gosh. Anything else?
One other occasion.
Yeah.
There was, Les had been told to lift up a steel plate in the deck and climb down in there and clean up the oil. We'd pick up oil residue from the engines down below our bunks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Les did. He climbed down, he was cleaning it up, and he was complaining about rags. And I said, hey, they just put out the laundry. Let me give you one of Dean Shiva's shirts. Laundry's on the bunks. He said, great, that'd be a wonderful thing to do. And so I threw him down a shirt. And after he'd scrubbed it up, got a lot of grease on it, I said, read the name, Les.
Oh my gosh.
It was his shirt.
You left the military. What was that process like?
I went to a place called OGU. It stood for Outgoing Unit. You stayed there until they finally called your name. There were people from all branches of the service were being discharged there. The thing that I remember most were the guys that were getting dishonorable discharges, because when they called their names, they would all get in a line and get into the back of a semi-trailer wearing goofy clothes, whatever clothes the Navy could round up. They may even have to wear a dress.
Wow.
So they would climb into the back of the truck, they would pull out to the curb and say over a PA system, the Navy is vomiting, and then they would leave.
What were your first few months out of the service like once you got home?
I was lost. I was so lost, I didn't know what to do with myself. And Dad had just bought a house in Wheat Ridge, and I decided to take a pick and shovel and dig a basement under it, which I did. Wheelbarrowing all the dirt out, piling it in the backyard, to where we actually had so much dirt, Dad sold the dirt. Wow. I dug a complete basement. No, you're totally lost when you first come out.
If you could give advice for anyone that's leaving the military and transitioning, what would you say?
I'd say hang on to your military stuff.
That's right. You didn't
hold on to your sea bag. I threw mine in the dumpster because I was afraid. That was uniform, papers, ribbons, citations, everything went into the dumpster because I didn't want to see it every day. I thought if I keep looking at this, I'll re-enlist.
Right.
I learned that I was capable of learning.
What were some things about civilians that were difficult for you to deal with when you got out?
Everything. I thought they were disorderly. I thought they were crude. I thought they were rude. And above all, I thought they were dirty. I didn't think they were clean enough.
Is there anything that you wish people that have not been in the military understood about military service?
Yeah, I wish they understood the military completely, but there's no way there's no way possible that they can without actually going in.
Sure. What are some habits you developed while you're in the military that you still carry to this day, growing up?
I like to wear everything blue. I miss the camaraderie and the job, doing your job and learning your job to perfection. I don't think you do that in civilian life. You've got to, in the military, you can't, it's got to be perfect. You've got in every aspect of your job because your life depends on it. I miss a lot about the military.
Is there anything you don't miss about the military?
Let me see. Nothing I can think of offhand.
What has been difficult to communicate to family or friends about your service?
I've talked to them basically the way we're talking right now, but I've always felt that nobody really understood, and there's no way that they can.
Sure, right. Well, I know you've shared tons of stuff with me over the years, so I've always loved that. So, very good.
That's about it, Jay.
That is it. That was another. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, we're wrapped up.
Let's see how that come out.
Absolutely.
Oh.